Today, as we begin to think about our sermon topic, I want you to consider for the time that is before us the message entitled, The Hidden Message in Water. The Hidden Message in Water. Last week, we began our journey, we begin our journey towards Lent, capturing the joy of Jesus through John. And Pastor Jen last week emphasized so much in her text, but the thing that stood out to me, those who were sitting in the praise team probably saw me over there just clicking away. I was just writing because she said something that just changed the perspective of this entire preaching series. She said, last week the text focused on, what are you looking for? And when she said that, I began to look for, what is it that you're trying to say next Sunday, God? What is it that we're looking for? And as I begin to think of that, and I begin to read today's text, as I begin to think about it, I came across a book by a Japanese scientist by the name of Masaru Emoto. The book he had written was entitled, The Hidden Messages in Water. As I ran across this book, I was actually interested in it because in the most fascinating ways, I have learned more about water in the past 5 days than in my entire life. He begins to talk about the power of water. He talks about how even as a fetus forms, that we form in the beginning as water. 90% of a fetus is water, and that as we mature into adulthood, 70% of who we are is water. He begins to discover water in amazing ways. As he looks at water, he talks about what fascinated him was one day he was looking at snow, and when the snow fell, 2 snowflakes came down, and he realized that no 2 snowflakes were alike. That drove him to research water. There's some school teachers in here, they're going to correct me if I'm wrong. Praise be to God. And so he started photographing water crystals. He went out and he realized that water was impacted by words, and that water was impacted by vibrations, that water was impacted by music. Water was even impacted by earthquakes or natural disasters. Water was even impacted by heat or microwaves. Many of us know that water is something that we also use on a daily basis. We use water, hopefully, to drink our 8 glasses a day, which I fall short of. We use water to wash our dishes and wash our clothes. We use water to garden, and we use water to do the very basic things we need to survive. Water is used in large amounts and mostly to produce food and agriculture and paper and even chemicals. Water is also used in the health industry. Water is used for medical and surgical tools and equipment. Water has been even used for patients with hydrotherapy. Water is so important that it's mentioned 722 times in the Bible. Water has a message. And I hear my Georgia accent, it is water. But water has some power in it. Water has some movement in it. And in our text today, as you heard the passages that Pastor Jan has so eloquently read for us, John chapter 2 and John chapter 5 both have water. They both have water in them. One, there is a miracle of healing, and the other is the miracle of turning water into wine. One, the water is at a place of a banquet. The other, the water is at a pool. The master of the banquet in John chapter 2 didn't know Jesus had anything to do with the miracle of turning the water into wine. Neither did the man at the pool of Bethesda know who Jesus was when he was talking to. One is a wedding. One is a pool. But in both of the texts, there are a crowd of people there getting ready to witness a miracle. In both of the passages, there are a great number of people that are gathered in this place. The passage that we're focusing on this morning, John chapter 5, there are a great number of people around the pool of Bethesda. There were people who were disabled around the pool of Bethesda. It was the place that they went to for healing. Everybody who was in that crowd crowd were in need of something. Everyone who was in that crowd had an issue. Everyone who was at the pool of Bethesda was either blind, lame, paralyzed, or sick. Anybody ever been in a place in your life that you felt like you couldn't see anymore, where you felt like you couldn't walk anymore, where you felt like you were paralyzed to the conditions of where you are? This is the people who were at the pool of Bethesda. And one of the people there at the pool of Bethesda was laying on a mat. Yep, I got a mat. He was laying on a mat, and he had been there for 38 years. As he had been there for 38 years, I want you to begin to think about what happens to the body when you have been laying in the same place for 38 years. The body, when you've been laying in the same situation and you feel like you can't move, your muscles and your bones don't work the way they used to, your nerves and your issues, and your body begins to feel like it's failing. Your blood doesn't even circulate. If you've been laying too long, the lungs and the blood don't breathe air anymore. When you've been laying too long, the skin becomes with sores if you've laid too long. Here was a man who was laying too long. And the reality is, he was laying on a mat. The text suggests, and the commentators suggest, that he was probably lame. He was probably not paralyzed, but lame. And so what is interesting about this, he's laying on this mat when Jesus appears at the pool of Bethesda, and Jesus initiates the conversation. Jesus goes to the man who is laying on his mat and says, "Do you want to get well?" And I began to think about the question that Pastor Jen asked as we kicked off the series, what are you looking for? Today I would ask, what are you going to choose to do? Are you going to choose one way or the other? Here the man at the pool of Bethesda had a choice to make. Jesus asked him the question, do you want to be well? And the question is, what will you choose to do when Jesus comes in the midst of your situation? What will you choose to do when Jesus shows up in your places of brokenness? What will you choose to do when Jesus is there by your bed of affliction? Will you choose to be well? Or will you choose to lay in your mess? Here, this man was laying in some mess, because the reality is, if he had been there for 38 years, he couldn't even go to the bathroom. He was laying in his own mess. Anybody ever felt like you find yourself laying in a situation? The illness has lasted longer than you expected. The grief is taking over you, and you are still laying in your mess. The financial situation has lasted longer, and you're still laying in the situation, but there is hope and joy on the way. But you have to choose, what will you do when it gets there? Yeah, Jesus asked the man, what do you want to do? Do you want to get well? The man has a choice to make. And I don't know about you, if I had been in the same place for 38 years, had I not moved forward in my life, had God not shown up in my life, had I not been healed, my answer would have been yes. My answer would have been, help me now, Master. Help me in this situation. But instead, the man at the well, no, not at the well, at the pool, the man laying at the pool. Lord, the woman at the well, we studied her real long. The man is at the pool. He didn't ask for help. He said, I have no one to help me when the water is stirred. Have you ever been in a place in your life you feel like the reason you hadn't gotten out of your situation is because no one else helped you? Have you ever been in a situation in your life where you felt like there is no help? The man who was lying on the mat came up with every kind of excuse. He came up with all of the reasons he was not well. He came up with all of the reasons he was still laying there. Let's not be like this man, and let's stop making excuses, and let's choose to do something different. Here this man shows us that he was dependent on other people. He was waiting on somebody else to fix his situation. He was waiting on someone else to come through. But what he didn't say was that he was needing Jesus. He was waiting on someone in human form to fix his situation. But I'm so grateful and glad that there is a Jesus. That when he's sitting there, after he gives all of his excuses, after he doesn't say yes to choosing to be well, then he comes up with the next excuse, and he says, I can't can't get there because somebody else gets in before me. This is the piece, even last night as I was thinking about the text, that messed me up, Pastor Jen, because if he was paralyzed, then he would have never been able to attempt to get up in the physical form to get to the pool. He says that when I get ready to get in, someone gets before me. Sometimes we make excuses about why we haven't gotten to the place that God has us, and we're looking at our physical ailments, but we need to be looking in the spiritual realm to see what God is getting ready to do. And here this man says that when I get ready to get up, someone else goes before me. He's so focused on what everybody else is doing. He's so looking at everybody else's miracle. He's so busy looking at somebody else's blessing that he misses the point. Because if I was in dire need of help, I'm going to take care of my blessing first. Now, it's not to say that I'm being stingy, not to say that I'm being greedy, not to say that the man should have put himself before other people. But when you think about when you're flying on an airplane, they tell you that in case of an emergency, if the oxygen mask come down out of the sky, put your mask on first, then help someone else. You can't help nobody until you heal. You can't walk with no one until you've seen Christ. You can't help somebody else get out of their brokenness unless you can witness to it. Here this man gets up out in this situation. He done gave Jesus every excuse why he was not healed. He has given every reason for what is wrong. And he has given every single inclination that it was everybody else but him. But God wants us to know this morning, just like the man at the pool of Bethesda, we need to stop focusing on everybody going ahead of us and get ready to get up for when God's getting ready to do something for us. Because after Jesus asked him that, after he gives all of the excuses, after the conversation that was initiated by Jesus, Jesus' next words were not that you are healed. His next words, do you feel like you're ready now for a healing? Jesus does, and he says, get up. Symbolizing that you have to make the decision. First, you got a choice, but now you got to decide. First, I'm giving you an option. Now you have to decide, is this what you want? And if it's what you want, get up. Get up out of your brokenness. Get up out of your grief. Get up out of your financial lack. Get up out of your disbelief. Get up out of the places where you feel like Jesus is not at. And when he tells the man to get up, he don't say get up and you're healed. He says, get up and pick up your mat. And when you pick it up, walk with it. Walk with your brokenness because you're still healed. Walk with your dysfunction because you're still healed. Walk with everything that's hurting you because you're still healed. Walk with everything that you felt that was holding you back because you're still healed. Walk with everything that you had once holding you back because Jesus has cured you. How do I know that it's been cured? Because after he tells the man to get up and walk with your mat, at once he was healed. Not 3 days from now, not 5 days from now, not waiting on a message. The man was cured at once. Oh, it's some kind of thing when Christians begin to believe by faith that when they can't see it, that they're going to come. Pastor Jen, the last time I preached in front of a crowd of people in this church was 2 years to this exact Sunday that we have been preaching since the pandemic has happened. And I looked out this morning and the church had just as many people this morning as it did 2 years ago. But by faith, we kept preaching. By faith, the doors stayed open. By faith, we kept trusting and believing. And this is what has been demonstrated with a man who had been lame. Oh, how many times over the past years, I know this ain't in my study notes, but how many times in the past 2 years did you feel like you couldn't walk no more? You couldn't move anymore? When is God going to fix this pandemic? When is God going to change this situation? Oh, I believe by faith there are some people in here this morning that says, I'm healed. Woo! He picks up the mat and then he walks. But before he moves rose from his place of affliction, he was healed. He didn't touch the water that he thought he needed. He didn't go to the water that he thought was going to heal him. He got healed by the only water that matters, and that hidden water is the living water. Who is that living water? Jesus the Christ. And what is so interesting about that, good Christian, good church folks, that after Jesus had healed him on a good Sabbath day, they decided they wanted to talk about that it was ritualistically wrong for them to do it. But if you understand the Old Testament, that in order to not do something on a Sabbath day, it was supposed to be work. So carrying your mess had nothing to do with the Sabbath. Oh, some people want to see you laying on your mat forever. Some people want to see you stuck in a place of affliction. Some people want to see you, and they were not even excited about the healing. They were more concerned about the process and when it happened. They weren't concerned about how Jesus did it. They was just concerned that he did it anyway. We have to be careful about how things happen as leaders, because this is what happens. The Jewish leaders were so focused on the Sabbath, but the best part, that when the man told me that I could get up, I could pick up my mat and walk, he didn't even know who the man was. Oh, what kind of faith? What kind of trust? We may never know that Jesus could be right now in the midst of human form, and the question is, will you trust him? And here, as we prepare to conclude, I'm not going to do the Baptist conclusion. I'm going to do the United Methodist version of it. I'm going to go quickly. The two texts, as I said earlier, they both have water in them. The two texts both have a crowd around. Just like there's a crowd here today. The two texts, there is a miracle performed. But the most exciting part of the two texts is that Jesus himself never touched the water. In John chapter 2, when the master gets the jar, only the servants have touched the water. But the most powerful part about the water in John chapter 2 is that when Jesus tells them what to do, and the water is poured from the jar and is turned into wine. We went to visit a Jewish synagogue a couple of weeks ago, and they began to talk about ceremonial cleansing and purification, and the jars that were used to turn water into wine were the same jars they used for cleansing and purification. Where's the connection? The hidden message in the water is that when there was a place in their lives of transition, the Jewish leaders say you tend to come get purified before you get married, before you graduate, before you do something different in a different space in your life. But there was a place where you come and you get, what was the pool called in the Jewish temple? Mikvah. You come in there and you get cleansed. And as Christians, we believe that when we accept Jesus the Christ, who is the living water, we get baptized in water as an outward expression of our inward faith. The hidden message in the water is not that the water is stirred, not that the water is poured, but Jesus is the water. He is the life. He is where the woman at the well said, where can I get this water so that I'm not thirsty anymore? And so for all who came this morning, who are ready to get up off of their mats, for all who came this morning in need of a miracle, for all who came this morning in need of restoration and renewal, we will come to the water to renew our salvation, to renew what we believe, and renew and commit our lives to the salvation that we've already accepted. We will come to this water knowing that it's a symbolism of the living water that we so desperately need. This morning, if you've never accepted Jesus the Christ, we offer Jesus to you, because it is in Jesus you will find every drop of water you need. It is in Jesus that's the living water that fills us up to carry us through our day, to carry us through our week, to carry us, that when we are walking with our issues, we are filled with the Spirit of the living Christ. And so as the praise team sings, I want you to begin to ask the Lord, what is it in the water that I need from you on this morning? What, Jesus, is it that I came looking for? So that when you leave this place, you will be filled with the power that comes from the living Christ.
You provide the fire, and I'll provide the